commission and limit your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. And that'll hold true for any remarks coming forth. If you'll state your name and address and limit your remarks to 3 minutes, please. But do we have anything that's not on the consent agenda that someone would like to bring forth? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes. Consider approval of minutes from the December 11th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And when anyone's ready, they can give us a motion. We're all here.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. So carries. Moving on to the regular agenda. 5A, consider and discussion possible action on items removed from the consent agenda. So we'll move on to 5B. Public hearing, consider approval for a specific use permit to operate a halfway house in an R4 multifamily district on Lot 8, Block 3 of the Bonita subdivision located at 2019 Pearl Street. This request has been submitted by New Hope Communities of Texas, Inc., case number 2024-01.
Good afternoon,
Good
Chairman,
afternoon, Juan.
Commissioners. Juan Paulette, Interim City Planner. So this request is for specific use permit to operate a halfway house in an existing 150 square foot home located at 2019 Pearl Street on the southwest corner of West College and Pearl Street. A halfway house is a facility where people with criminal records or a history of substance misuse can learn or relearn the skills they need to reintegrate into society and better support and care for themselves. The house was constructed in 2012 for the Burke Center and operated as a family group home for high-functioning people with intellectual or developmental disabilities until the middle of last year. A family group home is a community-based residential home licensed by the State Department of Mental Health, providing food, shelter, personal guidance, care, rehabilitation services, or supervision. Family groups homes are permitted by right in the R4 zoning district and did not need the approval of a specific use permit. The house has 2 levels with 9 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, and a parking in the back for 10 vehicles. The property is zoned R4 multifamily and requires the approval of a specific use permit for a halfway house to operate in this zoning district. The property is surrounded on all sides by multifamily and is developed as such. South along Pearl Street, there is single-family development, and there is a major commercial corridor 1 block east of the subject property.
I'm going to interrupt you a second.
Sure.
Can you change the screen so that what we're supposed to be looking at is bigger and minimize the
Attendees.
yeah. I can't, yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. So this is a picture of the subject property, looking at it along Pearl Street, the front of it. And this is a picture of the rear of the property, looking at it along West College. You can see the parking lot in the back. And then the picture on the bottom right is of the Bonita Creek Apartments, which is directly behind the subject property. And these are some multifamily adjacent to the south of the subject property. On that top picture on the left, you can see the beginning of the R1 residential district to the south. And then on the bottom right is the Heritage Arms Apartments, which are to the north. And then across the street from Pearl on the east is more multifamily. So staff believes that from a land use perspective, this request meets the conditions for approval. The one condition that is in question is compatibility, because that condition can be subjective. This home was originally built for similar use and was in operation for approximately 10 years. The home is not immediately adjacent to single family, and the central location and close proximity to the city's commercial corridor provides convenient access to employment, public transportation, retail, and other essential services. The goal of this land use is to help people transition from temporary into long-term housing and provide the skills and support that is needed for this transition to occur. The applicant is here to speak about the services they will provide, as well as the safety precautions and requirements that will be implemented at this location. This slide shows the types of uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 15 notices to the property owners and have received 3 written responses in opposition of the request and 1 in favor. Staff checked to see if the 3 opposing response forms triggered the 20% rule, requiring a favorable vote of 3/4 of the city council to request for the request to pass. The three properties total 15.4%. On January 23rd, we held a neighborhood meeting for this request. I want to make a clarification on the attendance of that meeting. In the staff report, it stated that none of the surrounding property owners attended the meeting. It should have stated that none of the surrounding property owners that were in opposition attended that meeting. We had 2 people in attendance that were in favor of the request. And this map shows the people that were in opposition. Their properties are highlighted in red. This slide shows a breakdown of the notifications staff sent out and responses received. The letter in support of the item stated that the house was originally constructed for that use, and the applicant would be providing a valuable service to people needing help reintegrating back into society. Of the 3 letters in opposition, the main concern was safety of the neighborhood, as well as lowering property values, and it's just a bad location. In light of this, staff contacted PD, code enforcement to run a report on this property, and found that there have not been any major incidents at this location.
Is the letter you sent out in the package? The letter that was sent to the adjacent property or the 200-foot, is it in the package?
I don't think we included the actual letter in the package.
I'm just curious if the letter stated that it would be for substance and alcohol abuse.
It just stated,
Is your mic on?
Is it,
I believe it just stated halfway house.
okay,
It didn't
thank you.
get specific into what type of use. So this concludes staff's presentation, and I can answer any questions from the commission. The applicant, David Rhodes, with New Hope Communities of Texas, is present and would like to address the commission. And we also have one person that's on call that would like to speak on this item. If you have any questions?
Just riding on Maggie's point there, is there a reason why we wouldn't expand on what it's going to be for specifically?
Well, the applicant, David Rhodes, is going to be here, and he's here, and he's going to present, and we got another presentation after this, and he's going to go into the specifics of how he's going to operate the halfway house and, you know, all the nuances of that, and he'll be able to answer your questions directly about his operation.
No, but why did the city not expand on what the halfway house would be used for?
Well, normally, because of the details of how he's going to run it, and he was gonna be here and present, so I didn't include, much of the detail. In future cases like this, we'll make sure and put more detail in that for you guys.
One, are those details, would they be part of the permit? Would they be specified in the permit that it would be used as presented here tonight? Would that become part of the permit? In other words, he couldn't decide, the operators couldn't decide in 6 months to allow a different type of parolee to,
Well, generally, it could be, but we try not to get too into what kind of applicants would be allowed. I guess, like I said, the applicant will speak onto how they're gonna process each applicant and the details of how they vet each applicant.
so since it's a specific use permit, how specific can we be in describing the use? Does it just have to say halfway house, or can we say halfway house for substance abuse and alcohol parolees?
I believe you can get somewhat specific. Maybe, I don't know if, Jerry, would you be able to?
You don't have to answer it. Maybe we can
Well, I'd like,
sort it through, yeah.
Jerry can answer it.
Yeah.
I think it should be. Is that mic on?
I think, is it?
Doesn't sound like it.
We can hear you.
Can-
I don't know if
Can you test it? Because there's a lot of people in
Test,
attendance. Okay,
Hear
there
me?
we go. Just needs to be closer.
Members of the commission, Jerry Baker here, city attorney. I did look into that issue today. Nathan brought that question to me this morning, so I did a little research. There's really not any case law that I've been able to discover that's really dived into as far as whether you can put a certain condition on a SUP like this for, in this particular situation. I did find one case out of the Texas Supreme Court. It's Barr versus City of Sinton, and that's a 2009 decision. The difference in that decision, though, was that it involved a ordinance that was passed after the halfway house was put into effect, so essentially, after the fact, and the Supreme Court shut it down and said that ordinance was in violation of the Texas Religious Freedom Restoration Act. But they did, the court did put in some, I guess, criteria there that I think is important to consider as the city or the commission might be analyzing whether or not these types of conditions can be added. And I wrote these down just for your information. One, there must be a compelling state interest for the regulation, and that would include any kind of condition that you put on there. Two, if there is in furthering that compelling interest, the governmental entity must show that it was used, it has used the least restrictive means for furthering that interest. So those are the two criteria, and I know that's, kind of a gray area there. So but those are the kind of things that you have to keep in mind as you're implementing any type of regulation, whether it's a condition or, passing the SUP to begin with.
So I know with the tattoo parlors that the hours of operation and the days of operation are specified in there. How does that fit in with what you're talking about?
Well, I mean, there was no requirement that they couldn't operate at all, and so you made some concessions, although they were restricted as to the certain hours that they were required. What I would suggest if the concern, and I need to ask this question: what is the particular concern from the commission with regards to what conditions we're going to implement here?
Let's push pause on that for a second. Let's hear what the applicant has to say. I think we need to go through that, and then we can come back and circle with you.
I'm
if
not
that's
sure
okay.
what the concerns are. I'm
Okay.
just trying to figure out, if they can be addressed by.
We may all have more
Yes,
questions here. So,
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
No, you're
there.
good. You're good. I think we may
Thank
all
you.
have some of those same questions.
Yes.
The applicant can. Is the air conditioner on?
I told him to turn the heat up.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but you can turn it down now.
You can have my down jacket if you want, Maggie.
I have
It's a
one.
full-length parka. I'm about to go on the slopes or
Need a
something.
heating pad.
Are we calling up Mr. Rhodes?
Unless
Yes.
you have other questions for me.
Yeah.
That's quite all right.
No,
Nope.
sir.
Thank you.
Good evening,
Good
Commissioners.
evening.
Thank you for having us here. I should start by saying that we want to give our thanks to the Planning Commission office, very professional in their conduct, and we appreciate their guidance through this process.
Thank you. Will you state your name and
I'm
address,
sorry.
please? No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
good, you're good.
I'm-
Thank you,
I'm-
sir.
I've never done this. So,
Quite all right. A lot of people haven't.
my name's David Rhodes. I live at 918 County Road 835 here in Nacogdoches, and my wife is here as well. I'm a retired corporate executive. She's a registered nurse at Nac Memorial.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
All right. So I want to address maybe the first thing that comes to mind without getting into all the statistics and stuff. Then I have a letter to read to you. But I think the elephant in the room is, what is this place going to be used for? And what could it turn into, and all those sorts of things. So it is our intent and expectation, and we have rules and regulations that I'll show you here in just a moment, to have this be an alcohol and drug abuse treatment facility, in-house treatment facility. It's badly needed in Nacogdoches County. They do some great things over in Angelina County, and I'll show you that. You'll see some of the differences. But because when you hear halfway house, people tend to think, and I would if I lived next door, is this going to be rapists and murderers and gang members and all that? And it's not. And we're happy to have, if a stipulation can be put on there that says so, we're fine with that. We're okay with that. That is our intent and expectation. So if I could, do I just on the right? Oh. So if I could just share with you the need in Nacogdoches County. I've done this very briefly. I think I only have like 5 slides, so I'm going to do this real quickly. This
Mr.
is from I'm sorry.
Can you bring that mic closer to you because it's good? You have.
I'm
there we
sorry.
go. No,
And
no,
I'm,
it's
and I'm
okay.
moving around too.
I
It
know.
doesn't
No,
help
it's
any.
all right.
But the regional needs assessment was done by the Alcohol, Drug, and Abuse Council out of Lufkin. It's on their website, ADAC Lufkin's website. And just to give you some stats there, like the per capita number of people in drug treatment, Nacogdoches County at 257, Angelina at 1,094. So obviously there's a lot more interdiction going on in Angelina County. Drug seizures, look at Nacogdoches County versus Angelina County. This was 2022 data. Suicide rate in Nacogdoches County, significantly higher than Angelina County. And I share some of that data because we love Nacogdoches. We spend the rest of our lives here. But there's a need here for drug interdiction. And there are other people that are going to speak here tonight about that, as well as the letter I'm going to read to you here in just a moment. So our intent, if we are permitted to do this, is call it Nana's house. Nana's my sister, Nancy Nicholson and Jasper. Anyway, so some of the features that you should know about is, I got a screen right here I can look at. We'll have an in-house manager that will be a substance abuse professional, just like is done in Angelina County. They have the 2 houses, a men's house and a women's house in Lufkin. Very tightly screened applicants. We're not going to take people with violent backgrounds, and we don't need the headache or the liability. In fact, our insurance won't allow us to. Typically, they'll be there 6 to 12 months. They have to be employed and pay their program fees. They've got to participate in house chores. There'll be a strict curriculum about class attendance, curfews, as you can see, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Visitation approved and monitored, random and regular drug testing. Their phones and their computers will be monitored. That may sound a little overbearing, but we are going to have, there's software you can get and put on phones and software you can get and put on computers that monitor everything you do. Every text message you send, every phone call you make. And we just feel they need order in their lives, and we're going to give it to them. Some they're going to like, some they may not. So you should be aware of that. In-house security, there'll be cameras inside and outside the facility and common areas, obviously inside the house. And then 0 tolerance, just as they do in Lufkin, for negative behavior. Taking drugs, drinking, whatever, being late for curfew, not obeying a probation, whatever it may be. So our position is this. We believe quite strongly that this house in this neighborhood is, one, built for this, and two, in this neighborhood will be, quite sure how to say it, but it's going to be a nice property, well-maintained, well-run, tightly operated, with people in it who have a lot to lose. They do not want to mess up. And so we hope and we would pray that this would be kind of a shining light in the neighborhood and not a detraction from it. That is our hope and our expectation. Lastly, I'll share with you, we have our core sources of funding, donations and grants. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. Program fees that the guys will have to pay. This is be a mail house. And then state and local funding that we won't get initially, but in time we will. So that's the kind of core of what I wanted to say, and hopefully dispel concerns regarding what it will be used for. And again, we're welcome to the stipulations to be put in there so that everybody's comfortable, including our neighbors. We want to be a good neighbor. So lastly, if I may, I have a letter from Judge Bob Enselman. He's the district court judge over in Angelina County. You may know him. And he called me and said he's got the flu, or he would be here. He asked me if I would to read his letter. I put his letter in your packet that I presented to you because he included his cell phone number on there, and I didn't want to put that in public. So here's his letter. Please excuse my absence today. I really wanted to appear tonight to voice my support for this project. However, I had the flu, and trust me, you don't want to be near me. I am Bob Enselman, judge of the 217th District Court in Angelina County. I am also a district court judge and president of the Mantooth House and Kirkland House. Both are recovery houses located in Lufkin. Both houses have strict zero-tolerance rules. We regularly drug test our participants. They must have full-time jobs, do daily chores, attend at least 2 recovery groups a week, financially support dependents, and comply with all the terms and conditions on probation if applicable. 9 p.m. curfew unless you're working at that time. On weekends, curfew is 11 if you've lived at the house for 2 months and have complied with all the rules. Both houses are run by a house manager. The ladies' house is run by a woman who's been in recovery for at least 15 years, and she works during the day at the Family Crisis Center of East Texas. She's been with us for over 6 years. The men's house has been in operation for nearly 2 years. The manager works for the Lufkin Alcohol, Drug, and Awareness Council. Recovery is not perfect. Chances of recovery without any support are dismal. However, our success rate's over 80%. I know some neighbors may voice concerns. I understand some concerns. We implement safeguards. First, we do not allow sex offenders to even apply. Second, we drug and alcohol test our residents on a frequent and random basis. Third, we have security systems in place to monitor the premises. I had the pleasure of visiting the facility in Nacogdoches. Frankly, I'm jealous. It's the perfect layout for a residential recovery house. Lastly, virtually everyone I know has a friend or a family member who suffers from addiction. Few addicts can drop their addictions cold turkey. Recovery homes where someone can stay 6 to 12 months gives the man or woman a much better opportunity to succeed and to be able to be a supportive parent, productive worker, and caring person. If you have questions, please call me, and he gives you his phone numbers there. So we're thankful to have not just Judge Enselman, but others here tonight that will support us, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Good?
Thank you.
Next? Okay.
I do actually.
I'm
have
sorry,
questions.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Rhodes, you've had experience in running facilities like this?
I have not.
You have not. This is your first endeavor to do so?
To run an alcohol and drug abuse, yes. I am a Stephen minister, which is a trained counselor, so I've dealt with a lot of people who have had addictions. Of course, my wife has been a nurse for 43 years, so she's also had exposure to that. But in terms of running a recovery home, this would be our first venture into that. That's why we're so pleased and happy to have the support that we do from whether it's Judge Enselman or some others that will be speaking here tonight. We feel it's our calling, and our intent is to do it if we are allowed to.
Okay. A question about management. Do you have somebody in mind already?
Not yet. We have some people in mind, but nobody is on the radar yet in terms of being close to do it. We didn't want to take that step until we knew we were going to get gonna have the approval and give anybody any hopes that they were gonna be in that role.
Sure, okay. In qualifications, what are you seeking for a manager of the,
Prefer someone with, that has a background in drug abuse, substance abuse counseling. I myself am going through Addiction Training Institute training. Of course, I won't be at the house, but living at the house. But somebody with that background, and frankly, somebody that's been there, somebody that has fought an addiction and that they know how powerful and destructive and consuming it is. And that's who we'd be looking for. It's somebody that's earnest in their endeavor.
okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The stats that you have, the drug stats, where were those pulled?
Those are from the regional area assessment that is on the website. I was going to print it out, but it's 175 pages. But it's a regional area assessment that is at the ADAC Lufkin's website, and you can link it. And if I can get your email address, I can.
No,
I can email it to you.
There looks like an exorbitant, or a lot more drugs in Nacogdoches than Lufkin. I've been in law enforcement 28 years, so I think some of that's probably skewed because there's an active interdiction unit that works the interstate that stops a lot of drugs that are
Good
coming
point.
through. So just from our commissioner's
That's a good point.
knowledge, it's not gonna be that high.
That's a good point.
So, but, are these folks that are gonna be in the house, are they local, are they Nacogdoches citizens?
They would be.
They would be
Primarily, I
Nacogdoches.
can't imagine somebody coming from out of county to come here, but they would be referred to us either by the court. Oh, that's another thing I want to say. I'm glad you asked that. They would refer to us either by the court, or they could, of course, come on their own volition. But the only reason we asked for the halfway house designation, that's the city of Nacogdoches you have to choose one of these. The only reason we chose that is that the Texas Department of Criminal Justice has a segment called our Intermediate Sanction Facility, an ISF facility, where someone who has been on probation or parole has relapsed and gotten back into drugs or whatever the problem may be, and they're put back in TDC in one of these intermediate sanction facilities. I think the one in Jasper is an ISF, but they can be released to a recovery home, but only if that home has what the TDCJ calls alternative housing, and it has to be approved by them. We have to have a letter from the city saying this is approved, and then TDC will say, okay, now this is approved. So guys could come from the Jasper facility to this house if we had it. So thank you for that.
Just one other question. You said no sex offenders, or is there any limitations to criminal records? Because obviously the interest, there are some people that are opposed to it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that everyone really knew what this was, or what was going on here. I can't speak for them, just surmising that. But do you limit anyone that comes in? Does it have to be limited to just a drug conviction or drug charge, or is it could be?
The answer to that would probably be no. It wouldn't be limited to just that. I mean, they're there to get alcohol and drug
Right,
abuse.
right.
But if there are other criminal background to them, I would say this: the need is so great that we don't need to take in someone who has a violent background. For example, if someone has violently assaulted people, I'm sorry, there's just so many guys that need help. And we would just be putting ourselves in danger, frankly, from a liability standpoint. And our insurance agent advised us of that as well. So we would be very careful to screen them and screen out violent backgrounds.
The Lufkin facility, but I'll tell you what, let me turn it over to somebody, I'll come back.
go, you're
So
on a
the
roll.
I don't know if it's a roller, but the Lufkin facility, has there been any issues or problems or incidents in those facilities?
I
And
can't
know that's a
speak-
broad term,
yeah,
but
yeah, I can't speak to that. No,
one,
sir,
okay.
I don't know that. I know they have a quite successful program, and I'm sure there are issues from time to time, if there would be with any home.
So picking up on Shannon's question about what type of offenders we're talking about, you had said that you don't take violent offenders.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm just wondering since they are coming out of the criminal justice system, what types of offenses have they been found guilty of?
Well, DWIs would be a significant one, but also drug use,
Possession?
possession and distribution. Often you'll find these guys that are in manufacturing even, that are also addicted. And to be able to stand in that gap for them could be a powerful thing for the community.
What is the length of time of the permit? I know with previous SUPs that we have, they have a time limit on them. They expire
Well,
or potentially expire. If we can't put conditions on it, I'm wondering if,
we
if
can
there's a
put
chance
certain
in the
conditions,
future
that
to
as long as,
revisit.
as long as
Yeah.
they're reasonable, you can
Yeah.
put certain conditions on it. I didn't mean to say that you couldn't,
okay.
but you could. And as long as everyone's in agreement, that's fine.
And we would
And-
welcome that, whatever makes y'all
That's
comfortable.
And basically, the SUP follows the land use. So,
But they can be revoked if there's issues.
yes, if they're not doing what they said that they were gonna do, the city can revoke the SUP. If there's continuous problems, things of that nature, the SUP could be revoked
For cause.
for cause.
I'm a little concerned, Mr. Baker, of what we could put into an SUP that doesn't, it's legal and has standing. I don't know. And I guess it depends what we're trying to offer, but
Correct. I think though with the applicant, if the applicant's in agreement, you're gonna have a lot easier time to get those approved and not worry about a challenge potentially.
Okay.
And so, again, as Juan mentioned, they have to be reasonable.
Yeah.
And remember those two factors that I mentioned earlier in my presentation. So, just to remind you, compelling state interest and least restrictive means. So, we stay in those parameters, then you're gonna be okay, I think. And then particularly, if the applicant is in agreement, you're a lot less risk of being challenged, you know, in.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Is that it?
thank you,
All
sir.
right. Yes, thank you.
There may be some other questions in a minute, but we'll bring you back up. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. We'll close, we'll open up to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to come up and add anything to it? Please, if you'll just approach, Sammy, just, you know the drill.
I've been here before, guys.
Hello.
Welcome
Sammy
back.
Smith. I've been in Nacogdoches for 43 years. I have watched the neighborhood
State your address real quick, Sammy, please.
in that area deteriorate significantly in 43 years. The area, in the geographic area
Sammy.
from West Star
State your address, please.
address.
Yes, sir, please, just-
1801, I'm in 1801 York Drive.
Thank you, sir.
The geographic area of that neighborhood, it runs from West Star all the way north to West Austin Street and bounded on the west bounded on the east by North Street and bounded on the west by Pearl Street, particularly as it applies to Pearl Street. Pearl Street in the last 43 years, I almost can't describe the deterioration of that area. I got two problems with this proposal. One is, I don't understand where is the need for a halfway house in the city of Nacogdoches, or for that matter, the county of Nacogdoches. And two, what is it going to do to that neighborhood? It is not a positive element for that neighborhood. It may be not much of a negative, but I'll guarantee it's not a positive. The property surrounding that, if you own property across the street, if you own property next door, you're probably gonna be at the ARB next year appealing your property values because of a decline in property value, have property next door to a halfway house. I just cannot see any positives to Nacogdoches County or the city of Nacogdoches for approval of this process. If you want to do a halfway house, there are better areas in Nacogdoches, move out in the county somewhere. Don't do it in the city. Or if you want to do it in the city, get it in a business area, don't dump it in the middle of a residential area. As I said, Shannon, I live at 1801 York Drive, and that's an R1 neighborhood. What if they tried to put a halfway house across the street from me? Do you think I'd be in favor of that? Would you be in favor if they wanted to put in a halfway house across the street from where you live? There's just not any positives there. I have personally known people who have been in halfway houses in Beaumont, in Tyler, in Paris. I don't know where there's a need in the city of Nacogdoches or the county of Nacogdoches for a halfway house. With that, I would encourage you to turn this down, but I can't vote for you. Y'all vote your heart.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you, Sammy.
I should remind everyone too that our vote is a recommendation to city council. They have the ultimate say and authority.
Thank you. Name and address, please.
My name is Brandon Rowell. I am the homeowner at 1911 Pearl Street. How are y'all doing? I just wanted to ask a few questions real quick. If this is going to be zoned for a halfway house, and the gentleman, Mr. Rhodes, correct, said that there would be no violent offenders, correct? Does that include, is it a comprehensive coverage of all of their past, or just that particular one they're in there for? So was it, in that case, that,
Question.
so could they have had any violent offenses ever in their life? Not just sexual assault, which is what I think the majority of the people who are in opposition are concerned of. I have a wife, we're having kids. That's just something that I'm not personally comfortable with, and it's not just me. I wasn't able to show up to the meeting last time because I had some stuff to do. However, in the case that that is the situation, and they it's only going off of that one they're in there for, say if they're in there for drugs or alcohol, I'm sure everybody is at least aware of somebody within their family or in the community that has those issues. We see it, we want them to get help, undoubtedly. However, being that I live in the neighborhood, being that kids get off the school bus there and they walk down, there's no sidewalks, they have to walk through the grass. I'm not saying anything undue towards those kids is going to happen, but it's a genuine concern. And furthermore, I just want to be sure that if this is approved, there are indeed tight controls and auditing of some sort that would, to make sure, because there was a previous halfway house there. When me and my wife bought the house, there's multiple sites that you can go on to look and see sex offenders in your area. Well, they were at that halfway house. There's 3. And it wasn't a halfway house for sexual assault offenders. It was for drugs and alcohol. So the question is, did they skirt around that original permitting process or what they were required to or not required to do? And if so, was it because there weren't any tight controls on the situation and there could have been better controls? And if this does get approved, can that happen? I just want to make sure that in the case, sure, we want to help people, but that is, in my opinion, if it's sexual assault, child pornography, anything like that, that's no for me. I mean, that's just how I see it, you know. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a good question.
Juan, I thought from the report it said the previous halfway house was Burke Centers for people with
Individuals with
developmental
disabilities or-
disabilities.
It was, that's correct. It was
So
for,
it was not drug and alcohol.
no, it was mental health issues. And it's called the Fairweather House, and they each had employment and, but yeah, it was for mental health.
Not criminal related in any way.
I'm sure maybe some of them had a criminal background, but.
Not a background, but
Or,
as a vehicle to assimilate back into the community.
yes.
That was not, was it a court-ordered halfway, or did those people go there via court order?
No,
Okay.
no.
So just real quick, with that.
You'll have to
Sorry,
come
Brandon,
back
you have to come up to the
front.
mic.
Last thing I'll say. For that, yes. That, whenever I say halfway house for drugs and alcohol, there were people in there that were drug addicts, that got kicked out for being drug addicts. There were people that were in there for drinking on the property. They did have alcoholism issues. However, yes, it was not specifically for that. I misspoke. It's for what he said. But there were people in there. That's what I'm saying. They didn't have the tight controls that they should have. That's all I was.
Understood.
Sorry. Thank you.
No, you're good. Thank you.
Did that facility operate by right?
Yes. It was considered a family group home, and it's allowed by right in R4.
And by contrast, this is considered a halfway house because they're coming from the criminal justice system?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Do you have another question, Commissioner? Perry?
No, thank you.
Good evening, I'm virtual. Can I have an opportunity to
You-
speak?
You can. Hold on one second. We have a gentleman that's stepping up, Miss Downey, and we'll get to you right next. Is that okay? Great. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Brad Bell. My address is 199 Sanchez Road. I'm in Lufkin. I'm a licensed chemical dependency counselor. I am also the clinical director at ADAC. David came to me and was talking about opening up, we don't call them halfway houses anymore. We call them transitional housing, is what we call them. Just like we don't call alcoholics anymore. We want to get away from the stigma. So, but anyway, so ADAC serves Nacogdoches County and Angelina County. And I will say that for years, there has been, we just don't get to treat near as many people in Nacogdoches as we do in Angelina County. And it really kind of starts from the government and, I don't know, just kind of a belief of, or a non-belief in recovery. Like in Lufkin with Judge Inselman, I wish he was here tonight, but he is such a firm believer in, giving people another chance. And so, but I certainly understand all the concerns here, and I put myself in in that Brandon, in the gentleman right there's position. I mean, but so my experience with, I work right beside the Mantooth House and the Kirkland House. And so right off the bat, whenever Judge Inselman got those transitional houses there, the first thing they did was fix them up. They were run down, and you ought to see them now. They're just like, they're the best house on the block, and so, and they're, he tightly screens the applicants, If somebody has a background, no matter how long ago it was, of sexual something or assault or whatever, they are just not eligible for this halfway house. And I would think that that's the way David is gonna run it. And maybe y'all can put stipulations, to guarantee that. Because, like David said, there are so many people that, we don't have to take those people. You can take the people that are just in there for possession of narcotics, and I'm not saying that's, good or anything, but, or maybe somebody that had like wrote hot checks, or something, and they were, in possession charge. That would be a perfect. So he could screen those, and that's what Judge Inselman does in Lufkin. And one of my counselors is the men's group. He lives there. And so I always hear what's going on. There's always drama going on in those houses, Somebody is missing some curfew, but I tell you what, it's addressed. And if they break the rules, then they get kicked out. Just this morning, my counselor came in, his name's Grant, and Grant came in, he said, "Oh, I need to see one of Ashley's clients. He missed curfew and didn't come in last night." And he was gonna tell her that he's kicked out of the halfway house because he broke a cardinal rule, and Grant had found out that he was drinking, and so, he's no longer a candidate for the help because, I'll speak about transitional housing. It is so important, y'all. These people, if you go to rehab or you go to prison and then you come back to your same environment, what do you think's going to happen? You're going to just start doing the same old thing that you did. That's what I did. I mean, I went to rehab, prison 4 or 5 times until I got into transitional housing and got some sense of normalcy that a transitional housing provides you strict rules, drug test, job, it puts you on your feet, and then you're able to leave it. You know, it's not a permanent thing. It's a transitional housing. And so, you know, does Nacogdoches need it? Oh, my goodness. I mean, it is so needed here, y'all.
Time, you just.
Yes,
go wrap it up.
so
You're good,
anyway-
you're good, I just.
Anyway,
time.
that's all I want. Thank you for letting me share.
No, we appreciate that very much, and, you know, I want to make it real clear, I think I can speak on behalf of my fellow commissioners here. We all support rehabilitation, halfway houses and what they serve. I think this is a special use permit, there's a higher bar and higher threshold to accomplish here. In the interest of the property owners locally, obviously, carry significant weight in this matter, so, it's not that we do or do not support what we're doing. We'll get through that here in a minute. I think we very much support it. So, anyone else like to come up and speak? Please.
And what about Ms. Downing?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Ms.
I'm sorry.
Downing.
Hold on one second. I'm sorry, Ms. Downey, and you're sitting here on the screen in front of me too, so I apologize. Please go ahead. Hold on one second, Ms. Downey. Just hold on one second. We're trying to, we can barely hear you, and so we're trying to,
Not on your end, we're fixing it on our end.
okay, go ahead now. Try.
Good evening, is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm Elizabeth Down, and I own the property 3 doors down
Oh, it's
at
echoing.
19 Pearl Street.
It's echoing.
I live in Houston, but my daughter lives in the home while she's a student at SFA. We were made aware of the application by a postcard. It was received the day before the public meeting, so I reached out with an email that evening. I spoke with Juan the next morning, voiced some concern. He assured me the council would be made aware and I'd be invited virtually to this meeting. We rent out 2 of our bedrooms to young female SFA students, and having a halfway house so close would most likely cause us issues with our ability to rent those rooms out in the future. In addition, the safety of our daughter and our tenants is very important to us, and we're just not comfortable with the unknown risk of reformed people trying to get reformed that close. In addition, we suspect that this property, if approved as a halfway house, could lower our property value. We were expecting to own the house for many years. Our daughter does graduate in May, but we've spoken, my husband and I, and we're fairly certain that if the halfway house is approved, we'll go ahead and sell our property rather than face the unknown risk of what this halfway house could do. In addition, another concern I understand is a bus stop at that property. If I was a student, I definitely would be concerned. I mean, even Mr. Brad himself, there's constant drama. I understand the need for a property like that, but should it be that close to a college campus? Should it be that close to residential community? So we're in opposition, and I appreciate you letting us voice our concern.
Thank you, Ms. Downey.
Thank you, Ms. Downing.
Thank you.
Sir, you can come up now, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk. My name is Yanli Zhang. I live in 2120 Pearl Street, apartment condo 210. I live there. I heard all of this. I strongly support the whatever help those people in need. I strongly support that. However, I really want you guys to consider, the committee to consider what is positive for the city, what is positive for the SFA there. When students come to SFA, parents come to SFA, what would they see around the campus, right? Especially even there's a smoke store right away in front of the best smoke store in town, in front of, I mean, what I want to say here is SFA is the key of this town. We need to help SFA to promote SFA to make this our flagship. Right now we are attracting halfway house there. What would the parents think, right? Not only for me, also for these people. My consider is, would you allow a halfway house in front of the city hall? Would you allow this to happen just right in front of your house? Then why would you allow this to happen just right next to SFA? That would be my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Yeah, please come on up.
My name's Gary Griffin. I'm a property owner at 127 West College Street, which is in the 200 to 500 foot space zone from this site. I also happen to be the previous owner of this lot on Pearl Street where this halfway house was built. I sold it to the original halfway house that had a different use than this one. One of my concerns, my primary concern is with the planning and zoning, the fact that it was not properly identified in the communications for me by mail as, you know, what the purpose of this was. So I would strongly encourage you guys to adopt a little more detail into your communications, especially when it's a controversial subject like this. I'm generally in support of the idea of this, and I do not believe it will lower my property values where I'm at. I can't say the same for the other property owners here in attendance. But I would like to see a specific use permit with conditions that properly address some of these concerns that have been stated tonight. And that is really my primary message I have here, is that stipulations is key to approval to this for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Jacob Crawford. I live at 240 County Road 726. I also own a property at 219 West College, which is within the 200-foot mark. I reached out to Mr. David and met with him to ask him what his intentions were for this halfway house. I have experience with halfway houses, and so I have probably more knowledge of them than most. I've been clean and sober for 20 years, and so I have lived in a halfway house, and that's a little embarrassing for me to say, being in this community. However, after I met with David and figured out what his intentions were, what kind of person that I perceived him to be, I feel that he would probably put the community's safety and well-being above any kind of monetary contributions. And so I don't think he's doing this for money. I feel like he's doing this to help people. And we are in support of that. I would also like to say that the property on Pearl Street has declined over the last several years, but there hasn't been any kind of facility there trying to help people that have alcohol and drug addictions. And so I don't think that's been the cause of it. And, you know, some might argue, and I would argue, would it increase property values if we tried to help clean some of that up? Because it's obvious that there's a lot of drug abuse and alcoholism along that street. And so what I'd like to ask is, what are we doing to try to help that situation? And so thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Crawford,
Yes, sir.
never apologize for being a human being.
I
so-
agree. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'd also like to say, Mr. Crawford, thank you for doing it, coming up here and talking about it. You are very cherished in this community, and you've become somebody that I truly respect in business matters, and somebody that's a great human being for this town. So I appreciate you coming to tell us that.
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all for letting me speak. Of course. I wrote mine down. That probably is a little bit unconventional, but I just do better that way. Okay. My name is Amber Jolly. I'm a realtor with Richard Humphreys Realty. I'm also a property manager for Mr. Crawford and Crawford Properties. I'm just wanting to speak today and express my favor.
It's the rules we have to go by. State your address, please.
Sorry.
That's okay.
159 Sundown Drive, Nacogdoches, Texas, 75964. I just wanted to speak on behalf of my friend and client, Mr. David Rhodes and Miss Faye. They have started this new adventure with passion. And I just want to, I don't think anybody's mentioned that this is also on their hearts because of their faith. It's very faith-driven. New Hope Communities is dedicated to bringing this blessing to our community here in Nacogdoches. The proposed halfway house or transition house, I believe, will be a beacon of hope for individuals seeking to overcome the challenges of re-entering society after incarceration. Our primary focus is on rehabilitation and providing a supportive environment for ex-convicts to begin to rebuild their lives. Research consistently shows that transition homes play a crucial role in reducing rates of re-entry into the system by offering guidance, counseling, a structured environment, and a godly atmosphere. These individuals will be better equipped to reintegrate successfully into the real world. It's important to understand that this reintegration benefits doesn't only benefit the individual seeking the help, but also the entire community. Because whether you like it or not, these people that have gone through these troubles and these trials, they're going to come back to Nacogdoches, so why wouldn't we want to take an extra step to help them be successful? I believe by providing a support system and tools for self-improvement, which is in their plan, and I encourage you to ask them more questions and talk to them more, and you'll understand what they have in place. They want to be very mindful of public safety and long-term community well-being. Mr. David has some very inspiring and touching stories that he could share with you that would beg you to consider weighing in our favor. I personally have a soft spot for those in this situation. I have a mom and a sister that have drug addictions and have both been incarcerated. My mom passed away in 2016 from these issues, and I know how hard her life was trying to overcome it. I think acknowledging the concerns that may arise with this are important, so I am thankful that you guys allow this platform for people to come and express their concerns, favor or not in favor. I think that Mr. David has implemented some measures to ensure the safety and security of the community, and we do invite that open dialogue to address any more specific worries that you may have. In conclusion, I just want to urge y'all to consider the profound impact that this transition house can have on our community, just fostering a sense of compassion and support and understanding for those striving to rebuild their lives. And that's it. Thank you all for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank
Amber.
you, thank you.
Hold on one second. This is very unconventional. I have your Rotary badge that I'd like to give to you.
Okay, great.
Oh, actually, it's in the other bag, so I will give it to you. So sorry about that. Didn't mean to. She's a Rotarian. She speaks truth. Thank you so much for sharing that, Amber. This is an emotional case, so.
Would anyone else like to come up and speak? Okay. Is there anyone else online? I don't think so. I think it's just Ms. Downey. There are a number of folks on here. If there's anyone online that would like to speak, please. Okay. Then we will close public comment and open it up for council, the commission discussion.
I had a nephew that lived in a transitional house, not here. It was in Kerrville because that was the closest place they could find a spot for him. He's doing great now. But if you think that people with drug and alcohol problems are not in this community, you're wrong, because they are. And they're in the apartment next to your daughter. They're in the, close to SFA. They're in town. They may be in your next door neighbor's house, for all you know. So I think that it behooves us to do what we can do to help people get their lives back in order. And if we can do that, and it can take, in 6 months, maybe they can get on the right path, that seems like a benefit to me.
When I was, when I was a teenager, I was raised by my father and my grandmother. When I was a teenager, my grandmother took a job working in a halfway house in Tyler. And I remember my father and myself and my brother all saying, we don't want you in that environment, because we were concerned for her safety. much like having a property across the street from this sort of thing and having children. It just seemed like it was not the environment for my grandmother, who was walking around with a cane. And but she saw it very much like the applicants. It was an opportunity to her to witness her faith, to witness for her faith. She thought it was her mission to be there and be supportive and to give hope to people that much of society may have turned their heads away from. So it didn't take very long for us to realize that all of the supervision, all of the safeguards that were in place, we became very comfortable knowing that she was there, because much like we've read in one of the documents that we have, and someone even said, it may have been Ruth, who said there are offenders, there are criminals who have not been caught and tried yet that are living all around us. And the individuals that were there with her were under such strict supervision that she would come home and she would have very emotional evenings where a person missed a curfew and she never saw them again because they went back into the system. A person may have come in and failed a breathalyzer test, and she was the person that administered that. And no matter how much she wanted to say, yeah, but that was a zero tolerance offense, and they would go back into the system. But I also know that it's very important that the property owners and the people of the community around that facility understand that and can see that and feel that same sort of comfort. This is a very serious topic, and I love that the word hope is in the name of this facility.
Thanks, Matt.
Also, our friend who wrote our letter here, suffering with the flu. If you've seen me sucking on candy over here, I don't mean to be rude. I'm trying to prevent from coughing into the microphone because I too am recovering from the flu.
Hopefully you're not contagious right now.
Yeah.
I am finished with my Tamiflu, and so I think
We'll move a little bit
I'm
over.
okay now.
No, I want to echo what, Commissioner and Chairman Conklin said. It's not that we don't support halfway houses or transitional homes, because clearly it's evident that we need facilities like that to exist. But we also must take into consideration everybody around in the neighborhood. And I think about, do we have a drug court here? Do we have a person that's making the right decisions? Do we have the people that are actually going to be looking and enforcing into the ordinances to make sure that we will follow the strict parameters of what this halfway house will be? And to be quite honest, I don't know that we have the manpower to do that if anything was violated. I do also think about, in terms of the location to proximity of where it's located on Pearl Street. Mr. Crawford did echo the sentiments that it is apparent that there is some drug and alcohol use around there because of what Sammy also said about the degradation of the neighborhood. And I have no doubt that if you came in and actually fixed up the home, it would increase the property value by that. No doubt at all. I think that you would administer it with love and care. However, proximity to 2 liquor stores on Pearl Street that's walkable distance concerns me. Because if you are treating people with alcohol addiction and they have the proximity to walk so closely to that location, that could be a problem. And so that is what I would like to say. And on to anybody else.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with 2 of my fellow commissioners about the fact that there's offenders all over the community. We just don't know where they are, and they're not being watched or cared for or given any structure. I lived at 2120 Pearl Street for over 2 years, so I know that neighborhood pretty well, and it's definitely not a family-oriented neighborhood, most of it anyway. It's college students and single working people a lot. But anyway, I think that putting conditions on this is critical for me to support it, and we've talked about some of those. I'm not sure how we go about, Juan, how we would go about negotiating those, or if it needs to be done tonight, but I think the gentleman that spoke about having sex offenders in the previous unit, which was not called a halfway house, and it was permitted by right rather than by special use permit. So I'm not sure, but what he brought up that I thought was really important was how far back you go into each applicant's history to see if there's sex abuse. Maybe it's not just the most recent offense, but all the way back, and not just using violent crime, but things like child pornography be included in the screening process. And then also, I think there needs to be some way to follow up, and I'm not sure how to do this and still be reasonable with the request, but to follow up to assure that there's no, that a nuisance has not been created. Because we all have the best intentions at the beginning, but it's a matter of being held accountable, which is obviously something you know a lot about. Being held accountable to make sure that the property is kept up, that it doesn't detract from the neighborhood, and that the applicants or the residents are not causing problems. So I don't know how we do that, but is that something we can do before we vote on it?
Well, we would need to, if you have any conditions that you would like to apply, those would be addressed tonight.
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
Would the applicant, if the applicant would like to agree to some, I'm sure has some conditions that have to be met by the applicants, and he can state that and make that part of the SUP conditions. Some of his regulations that they're going to require the applicants to pass or whatever. That could be part of the specific use permit.
I have a little concern just from the beginning. I've heard from two people here present, and Ms. Downey, who's joined us, that I'm not sure that we've communicated with the folks in the area, property owners, to the extent of what this is going to be. Maybe we could have expounded on that a little bit. I'm not sure, and this is not being critical of the city. This is just saying this is potentially a lessons learned. I'm not sure.
When we advertise it, we just go by the land use.
Okay.
And it's, unfortunately, that it's considered a halfway house, and that's what it's called, and that's what we have to address it by.
Okay.
And yes, in future, we will put a little more detail, but we didn't want to go into detail because there's a lot that goes into this whole process, and that would have been a whole thing within itself. That's why Mr. Rhodes came up to speak tonight to address any of those conditions. But in the future, we will put more detail, just more broad detail of general requirements maybe, or what is going to be specifically it's going to be used for, because halfway house is pretty broad.
Yeah.
And then we'll get more detail and narrow it down so there isn't so many questions in the future.
Just so everyone knows, we're volunteers, and we definitely don't know everything. We're learning every time we come up here, so.
Nathan's on the call. Does Nathan have anything to say about it? He is our interim city planner as well.
He's the planning consultant.
Planning consultant.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Part of my concern too is that when you go, Juan is 100% correct, is that we go off of what the actual definition is, right? And so I'm looking at the definition right now is that halfway house, I'm sorry?
You're good, go ahead.
You're good.
Oh, okay, sorry. Halfway house criminal means a facility for housing, rehabilitation, and training of persons on probation or parole with correctional institutions or other persons found guilty of criminal offenses. So really that's what you're basing your response on, right? And so I don't know, I do have a question to ask of Jerry, is that Jerry, is there a possibility that, say, if the commission deems this appropriate, that we also look into applying another, if this is something that we want to look into. Again, this is not to make sure that this gets approved or not, but there might be distinctions between this type of halfway house and a criminal halfway house, right? So maybe we need to open our views a little bit more and allow for there to be, if we know that there is a difference in the two, that maybe that's something that we can look into adopting a new definition based off of that.
No, absolutely.
Well, I think we're limited by our definition in our ordinance right now, and it's specific to criminal. When you're talking about halfway house, there is another definition for a group home, as you probably know, and it's a little bit more a different kind of facility. But as of right now, this is what our ordinance provides for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Juan, do you have the letter that went out to the area residents?
We have it upstairs. I can go up and get it, and if you need to look at it.
Does it specifically say criminal on the letter?
It's.
No.
I'd like to.
I don't think it
I'd like to
says
see it.
criminal. It just
Because
says.
I Googled halfway house and that's what it says. So, the definition in our ordinance is just exactly what he just said. But I don't think your letter said,
It might not have said criminal.
probably just said halfway house.
I'd like to see it,
Okay.
please. You have it?
Do you have it on?
Did,
Yeah, bring it forward, please. Is that the letter? Okay.
yeah, can
Do
you,
you mind bringing it up here to us?
it just says halfway house?
Could,
It's okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
I lived at 215.
It's in parentheses.
We can also postpone if we don't want to make a decision tonight.
Can I ask a question of the applicants?
Of course you can.
Just out of curiosity, could you give us a hypothetical example of what would happen? Say a person, they have a curfew of 9 o'clock, say they didn't return. What happens then?
Well, if they're on probation, for example, you'd call their probation officer. And we tell the probation officer they're been unsuccessfully discharged from the program. Typically, in about 15 minutes, they're in handcuffs and they're taken away. Now, after that, we're kind of out of the picture. I'm not sure what Angelina County does, maybe Brad could say, but that's my understanding of how it works. And I have some exposure to a halfway house operation in Fort Worth, and that's how it works.
Not here. Our jail's
heard
full and
that.
overcrowded, and
I read that.
unfortunately, we've got issues of our own here. So
Yeah.
that most likely, being in law enforcement, that most likely would not happen here.
I don't know where they would go. So that that's the best answer I can give you.
Would it be similar for if they were if they got up and say they found a way to go wander the property at night or something like that past curfew? Would it be a similar situation?
Out, zero tolerance. There's too many people that need it, that need those beds, that want those beds to tolerate anything like that, or put us and our liability in danger. Right. We want to be a good neighbor, and we can't do that by letting people violate rules.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have no doubt it'd be run like a tight ship. Right?
Count on it.
Mr. Rhodes, have you looked at any other properties around Nacogdoches? Is Nacogdoches where you want to be for
It
this?
is, we want to be in Nacogdoches County.
Okay, in the county.
Have we looked at other properties? Yes. This one just happened to pop up, and it was built for this type of setting.
Right.
9 bedrooms,
Right.
3.5 baths. You don't find those very often.
Right.
So it was kind of the ideal situation, so we frankly stopped looking elsewhere.
Okay.
But it's not to say they're not out there.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I wrote something that might be a condition. I mean,
Yeah.
if we have to do this
Yeah,
tonight, somebody
I'm-
has to do
I'm
this.
game.
Okay. Applicants will be screened for the following previous convictions. And by previous, should I say, does that imply all?
That would imply all, I would think.
including violent crimes and sex offenses, including pornography. Is there anything else that should be excluded?
Those were the three that I wrote down, violent crimes, sex offenses,
including
or,
pornography.
yeah, including, and also pornography.
Such applicants shall not become residents.
We're fine with that language.
But
And keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, that everything they do in that house will be monitored. Every keystroke on a computer will be monitored. Everything they type into a phone will be monitored. Every website they go to will be monitored. There's no outs.
What about expenses, their own personal expenses? They earn their own living,
They do, they'll have to have a job and pay their fees.
okay, and they have their own bank accounts. Is that monitored at all?
Yes, and it's a little bit controversial that we've talked
Right.
about doing it in this process because, frankly, we're going to control their lives for at least the first 90 days they're with us. That includes their money. And so their money will be put into an account with their paycheck. They will get a full accounting of every single penny, but their program fees will be paid, their probation or parole fees will be paid, court cost, if they have child support or alimony that's supposed to be paid, that comes out. And then at the end of the day, they get a cash or check, whatever it is, for the remainder. But, you know, it may sound overbearing, but we're just not taking chances. This
Right.
is a calling, we feel like, for Faye and I. And we're not doing it for the money. We're not taking any money out of it. We're putting money into it.
Sure.
But we just feel like this is our calling. And
Thank you.
it will be tightly run, I promise.
Yeah.
Sir. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I personally would like to postpone it, and if we can hear from the judge himself, with who has experience running these from the court perspective and sending convicted offenders to halfway homes, how that would potentially work and what his experience has been around the neighborhoods that have already established halfway homes. I don't think that a decision needs to be made tonight. So I would like to make a motion to postpone it until a further date. However, I'm not sure which date that would be.
Can I ask Mr. Rhodes if that would create an undue hardship for him to postpone this?
No, ma'am, I don't think it would. We'll work with you if that's what we need to do to get this done and be fully transparent, that's fine with us. We have a closing date tentatively, if they're all approved, at the end of March.
End of March.
Yeah, so we'll have a meeting in March.
When is the city council meeting? When would it go before city council, assuming we punted till next month?
It would be on the third Thursday.
Third Thursday. Okay.
Tuesday.
Third Tuesday, okay.
So 1 week
And this
after
is the
ours.
Second, so,
So ours is the second Monday and they would hear it the following week.
The 19th of March.
Which would still be before his closing.
It would be before closing.
I'll second your motion then, in
Okay.
that case.
And I'd like to talk, one, if we could, Mr. Baker, afterwards, or, well, maybe I don't know, we have to do it.
We might have to do it now.
Yeah, we will have to do it now, that's right. Just about, I don't know that, perhaps the letters, I've heard from several citizens tonight concerns about either it being there, or they didn't get the letter, or it was vague, of it explaining exactly what its intended use is gonna be. And I don't know if we send out letters again, I don't know if we have the time to do it, just kind of,
Well,
I don't think we send them out again.
okay.
if we postpone it or?
No, to resend letters that are more specific to the residents, is that correct? That's what
Yes.
Chairman Conklin wants.
Just asking,
Yeah.
what's the process for doing something like that?
We just have to mail them back out again and.
How many letters were there?
Do you have the?
Is that including the 500-foot too?
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking yes, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
The 500-foot is just a courtesy, so it's only a postcard, so there's not gonna be that much detail into it, and we just put the land use that they're requesting or the specific use.
But it doesn't have the actual, the specific heading of what the halfway house is, which we do list as in our code, correct, Mr. Baker?
Yes.
And it's not listed on the card, so it can be a little bit misleading.
Okay.
And look, a special use permit has a higher bar that it has to pass. Property owners, obviously in the area, have a big say into this, and I think we need to do everything we can to afford them the opportunity to come forth and speak. So, and with that, I would agree with you on postponing, if we can accomplish that as well. Amy,
Mr.
how many?
Chairman, I'd just like to say a quick note, if I could, is that I believe one of the other commissioners brought this up earlier, is that please keep in mind when asking or putting forth any sort of conditions. The reminder I'd like to say is that we always have to think about how are we going to police this in the end. And, you know, even I'm not sure if Mr. Rhodes is able to provide us with that information. He's going to have a private, you know, what kind of report are we going to get? Are their names going to be redacted? How are we going to be checking those things out?
Right. No, and I personally am not naive enough to think that we would put strict stipulations in place and then we don't have any way to enforce it or check on it on the back end. So I'm more in the opinion, me personally, that we need to afford the property owners with as much information we can, be fully transparent, because it is a little bit, for me, it's misleading. So I would think, and we've listened to several folks speak about it, that we resend out the letters. I think Lily's point was to maybe hear from some other potentially subject matter experts around this. I don't know that we necessarily have to get to stipulations or restrictions at that point. We can move forward accordingly. So I appreciate that, Nathan. I understood. Do we have a motion? Is there anything else from the commissioners first? Do we have a motion?
Yes. I make a motion to postpone until the next P&Z meeting, which is occurring on Monday, March 11th.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I was falling asleep there for a minute.
Just,
I
Amy,
was
make sure,
daydreaming.
I made the motion and Maggie did second that before.
Yes.
So
I'm
it's
all for
unanimous
postponing.
into postponing this 1 month to allow us to gather some more information here. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you for everybody that
Thank
came
you, everyone.
to speak tonight. Appreciate it. Yes. Yes, Amy would like to take it back.
Yes, we will close the regular agenda at this point and take a 5-minute recess.
Did you want your card back?
Hearings. Okay. Until next time. Let's move on to work session.
Nathan, if you're
Hello.
hi, how long do you think we're going to be in here for the workshop session?
Well, that's what I was going to start off by saying, is that it really depends on you and how many questions that you do have. I don't want to keep you because this is mandatory at all, and we can always add this to the next meeting if needed.
Okay.
I'll leave that up to my colleagues here if they want to punt this to the next one.
Well, then that makes the next one longer.
Well,
Or we could meet earlier on the next time and then do the work session before, like at 4 o'clock, and then start the next meeting at 5 with the regular agenda. That's how we did it before.
Or we could have a special meeting in between this one and the next one, which we were gonna do if we had extra items.
Right.
Can I just propose that we kind of just generally cover
Yes.
and not go into detail? Because you'll have these to look at until we meet to the next time. I think, and Nathan will probably address this in a minute, but I think the plan is for you guys to discuss these matters.
Okay.
But also to potentially have a joint workshop with the city council.
Right.
Because we want everyone involved to be fully informed before that vote comes, because of course, the city council will be the one to have to approve it, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Nathan, I think that in general, if we can't get through we're definitely going to go through the general ordinances that you want to talk about.
I can do that. I'll leave out a lot of the specificity, but I'll get through them all.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start off. Is there, and I'm sorry to say this, but I'm hearing a reverb. Is there someone with their mic on?
we all have our mic on.
I turned mine off,
Juan just, I was about to call you Paulette. Juan just turned his off, so I think the reverb should be
I think yours is
better.
on.
Okay,
It was his.
yeah, that's
though.
better.
Oh, it doesn't matter, ours doesn't matter.
Well,
He has
okay,
a speaker
no
in.
problem. So as we were just talking, is that we are bringing forward these text amendments that we've been working on for the last little while. And we wanted you to have the option to have it as a workshop so you'd be able to digest the material and ask any pertinent questions of staff. In efforts of being transparent, staff will be meeting with the new city manager. And as Gary just said, is that our goal is to have an overall joint meeting with the city council, so we all can be on the same page. We're all seeing the same amendments, and we all get the same information. So the first one we're talking about is discussing the amendment of chapter 118-141 subsection B. And basically this is one change of one word. Reason being is that the interpretation of having commission, where there's that strike through change to council, is that what was happening was staff was bringing these items that would had 3/4 of, or there was a protest, and they were bringing it back to this body, the commission. And it actually, when you read the local government code, it's actually the governing body that you have to have a 3/4 vote to approve that particular protest. So we are just changing it from commission to council.
What page is that, Nathan? I'm sorry.
It would be, yeah, if you can follow through, this would be section 118-141.
Got it. Okay, got it.
My understanding
Protest of
was that it
proposed
was,
change in zoning.
my understanding was that it was always like this. This is the way it was this is the rule, this is the way it works. It was just confusing
No.
because it said commission instead of council.
Yeah, the commission is carryover from the.
Oh, yes, that's how it,
the
we're
old terminology.
changing it back.
So the city council used to be called the commission, that's why it's confusing. So
But
it's
we've
not
been-
really a
That is one of
change.
the
It's a
suggestions
correction.
as to why it is like that. So we're just cleaning this up.
Okay. Well, that's the practice we've been adhering to.
Right.
Thus far, okay. I don't think there's any,
No objections on
yeah,
that.
there's no,
Okay?
Do we
So
vote on
we're
each
moving on
one
to-
to recommend it, or are we just? Okay.
This is just a workshop,
All right. Moving on.
and so we can discuss if you'd like,
no, go ahead, Nathan.
Oh,
but
there's no
I was
discussion.
gonna try to keep on moving.
Keep going, sir, please.
Yes, sir. Okay, agenda item. It's to discuss the chapter 118, article 4, development standards and off-street parking. So part of what was going on, we changed in the way parking is being in our nation. We are actually looking to use maximum parking standard versus minimum parking standard. So there has been some suggested changes to off-street parking ordinances, one specifically for duplexes. And then also we wanted to have a discuss front yard parking, and then a potential change to strip center development. And instead of enforcing per land use, say for example, if there was this restaurant and then a nail salon, a donut shop, instead of looking at those differently for each one, we would just overall parking requirement center as such, which should allow for clarity and flexibility when it comes down to utilizing our parking ordinance. And then additionally, we were going to provide a turn plan for when there was a developer that might have something different in mind, and we would give them this flexibility to submit to staff, and staff would get with engineering and be able to make a determination, again, with giving more flexibility and opening instead of having to go to zoning board of adjustment for these changes. So that's very high level. Is that too high level, or do you want me to get a little bit more on them? But that's kind of what we're bringing forth to you.
I'm having a hard time finding the one you're talking about.
This is the next one. 6B?
That's what I thought, but I don't see in here where it talks, I see bicycles and, oh,
It's,
Page
so this
29.
particular
Right there.
ordinance is fairly long, and
gotcha,
the
okay.
changes that I proposed, will happen at the beginning, and then in the middle and at the end. But for sake of time, I wasn't gonna go through each and every one of those. I was just gonna give you a high-level explanation, and then you'll have an opportunity to read through each of those particular red lines. So each of those you'll have a red line that goes with it, the proposed changes that staff is requesting to do. And so you'll see a strike through and then new verbiage that we're proposing.
okay, thank you.
Nathan, can you clarify, when you pull these changes in the ordinances, are you pulling from examples of other ordinances in different areas? Are you pulling from your experience? Where are they coming
So a
from?
little bit of everything.
Okay,
So sometimes this, so for example, for duplexes, it really was calling out the word duplex within the parking ordinance itself. And so some of it, is just straightforward, very straightforward. It wasn't really examples, but we did go through and look at several other cities when needed to say, like, are we in line with what they're doing? Is this what's going on? And there are some examples that we'll be able to get into when we go through it with a more of a fine-tooth comb.
okay, thank you. And my other question for you is, when you say staff recommendations, can you please clarify that for us as well?
Sure. If I understand your question, is that staff recommendations were going to, or actually, maybe you need to clarify that for me.
Oh, are you talking about the planning and zoning staff? Are you talking about the city staff in general? Are you talking about how does this come about to you? Is it the city manager that comes and says, hey, we'd like to look at these ordinances?
Oh, I see. Yes. So when Steve Bartlett was still here, before he retired, he got together with staff, including parts of engineering. I think Case was involved too. And there were just some items that were causing some issues, and these were to be, some of them were going to be simple fixes, and other ones would help with removing the large amount of items going for the Board of Adjustment.
For ZBA, okay. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. No problem.
Is there any further questions on the 6B?
I'm sorry, I have a question about the residential and agricultural districts, number 4, sub item 4. Are we talking about people parking in their front yards? Because that's a big
Yes.
deal in my neighborhood, and I don't like it. And
Understood.
I don't
So
know if this means that they
this-
had to build a driveway, they can turn their front yard into a driveway, or if they just park in their front yard.
This limits the amount of area that can be utilized for parking in the front yard.
So it doesn't have to be an
So-
improved driveway, it can be an unimproved, and that would,
It should be an improved driveway.
I didn't.
It has to be?
Yes.
It doesn't say
And
that.
when this goes through too, is that we're also looking for input too. So if we were lacking a term or something that maybe doesn't make it clear, then that would be an opportunity to say, yeah, maybe we left something out, or I need more clarity in this particular definition.
This Shannon, I personally would, if this is moving forward, to denote improved, I don't, if it's in here, I don't see it, but
Yeah.
it's pretty ambiguous right now of where you can park other than 50% of the yard, but improved would be more aesthetically pleasing for the property owners and the city itself.
So
Fair enough.
this would prohibit people from parking in their front yard if they use up more than 50% of the front yard as defined by between the side lot lines.
Yes, ma'am. And it would, with the other point that we would make there is that would need to be improved. And again, with the idea that this would improve the aesthetic, and people wouldn't be parking on grass, et cetera.
This is gonna be a big deal in my neighborhood if it's enforced.
It's gonna be a big deal in a lot of
But
places.
he's right, it would do a lot to really improve the way our community looks.
Okay.
Well, through code enforcement.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know, but you have to start somewhere.
start-
You
you're
can't
right, you're
enforce
right, ma'am.
something
You're-
that is not on the books.
Okay. Thank you, Nate.
And that is actually, yes, and that is a very fair statement, is that usually when you go and take a large bite, you got to start somewhere. So
Yep.
this might become political and maybe it won't go through, but this is what we're going to propose, and if it doesn't, then we'll go from there. So moving on to the next one is definitions. There were 3 specific definitions that were lacking in the zoning code, which was duplex, street, and public right-of-way. So very simply, we just added duplex in as it's a 2-family dwelling. So there was a definition ready for a 2-family, but the word duplex was not in there. So we just merged the 2 together because the word duplex is used throughout the ordinance, and we wanted to make sure it had a home. But then what we also noticed was when we went to see all of these different single-family residential building types, duplex, triplex, attached homes, multifamily, etc., that they didn't have a commonality between them. So what I'm used to is that in order to provide good customer service for folks, is we wanted to bring them to one location that kind of showed them all the different single family or residential types to build. So we kind of we gave a word dwelling common word we are going to use to bring everyone to this. So what we're proposing is to bring dwelling. We start with a T, and then comma the next word duplex, and dwelling, multifamily. And so when they go to our definitions page, they'll see all of those together. And we felt that that was a good way to bring them in from a customer service. They only had to go to one spot in the ordinance to look at all of those things. So that's one thing that we're going to be bringing up. Another one, we didn't have a street definition or public right-of-way. They are defined in other sections of ordinance, like in section 90, chapter 1, chapter 98, and chapter 110. So we're going to propose a new definition for each of those and house it in the zoning ordinance. And then wherever that word is used throughout that needs a definition, we'll relate it back to or hyperlink it back to the zoning ordinance. Again, for ease and clarity within our ordinances. Is there any questions on that?
I have a question about the definitions, this section in general. Is it possible, because of what happened tonight with the halfway house being really the only category that could be used for this proposed special use permit, can we create a definition for a transitional house that specifies that it's for nonviolent criminals with drug and alcohol abuse issues? So that it doesn't, the SUP that was the subject of tonight's hearing doesn't have to be placed in the definition of a halfway house. Is that possible to create a new
Yes.
definition?
But it is a halfway house.
Well, it's a subset of a halfway house.
What's the difference?
The difference is that, because
Well, criminal
for
as
court
in
judge.
like nonviolent criminal,
Right.
or something.
he said they're trying to get away from using that because it allows that definition allows the violent criminals and sex offenders, whereas if you could create a transitional house, which is people coming out of the correctional facility, but the purpose of the house is for drug and alcohol abuse recovery. I mean, is there a state definition like that we could use or create?
Probably not.
I know I'm sorry, is someone?
Mr. Baker has something to say.
No, I was just saying, we do have another category, it's a family group home that's defined in these definition sections. So the distinction here with the halfway house criminal, as it's defined here, is that these people are being placed here through the criminal justice system.
Right.
Not like a volunteer system where they're, where there hasn't been a criminal conviction yet, they're going there voluntarily or something like that. So
Right.
that's a distinction that needs to be made.
Absolutely. Court-ordered criminal.
I mean, they're against their will at the end of the day. I mean, they have to agree to it essentially, or they stay in jail, but it is a criminal, they're criminals. That are
Not
still,
necessarily.
this house is.
Well,
This house that they're operating is
Yeah, it's-
people
Yeah,
coming out of the
they're-
system.
they're coming out of the system.
By court order.
It's the
Yeah, they're-
type of criminal that they are that
It
I'm.
can't be, what they're setting up, or the proposal was from a court basically ordering that person to go there.
But it could be a self-referral. He could set it up as a
He
self-referral.
could set that up, I guess, but that's not.
But that's not, he did say that someone could volunteer to go there, but that's not what that permit was for, though.
No.
Right, this is for
So-
They
criminal.
are criminals,
Yes.
technically.
Technically, by legal definition.
But we want to create a category where the type of criminal is specified and limited.
I don't
Shannon,
know,
that's
I think
very-
that's diving a little too deep into it, because we have a lot of definitions that we should actually be putting in here that,
Yeah.
and that one's too, in my opinion, too specific for something that if we don't have multiple facilities in Nacogdoches to do something like that.
Right.
I think me personally, I think I think the path forward was not to create another definition, but reserve that for what the SUP's for and add limitations to it. That way you're
I
not
agree.
boxed in on that
As
front.
long as, yeah. No, I agree. That's why it's special.
And, we can't talk about it, so anyway, okay.
Go on.
Talk about it in context with this definition.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so-
any questions in regards to the other definitions?
Well, I just think it's important when something can be sensitive that we, that the lessons, me personally, I see a lessons learned here where we denote that, because I'm in law enforcement a long time. I don't do it full-time anymore, but I am actively involved. I didn't really assign a halfway house as being criminal. I really looked at it something different, essentially. And look, I think it's wonderful. It's absolutely neat. We have to do that. But again, when in an SUP situation, we've got property rights owners that step up and speak, and we're going to take that into consideration. So with that moving forward, when we send these out in these, I think it's important to accurately give all the information there so folks can see it. So, and Mr. Baker, in the context of us talking about this chapter, so kind of, yeah, all right, I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay. And point taken, we'll make sure that will happen. Actually, we've already talked about, previous to the meeting, we had talked about some amendments that we can do that will do what you just said. So I think we've already taken some steps to do this, and so it won't happen again.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, real quick here. I know other folks got to get going, so I'll try to go through this as quickly as I can. In chapter 118, Art 2, administration and divisions 3 and 4, we recently went through a rules and procedures amendment for the zoning board of adjustment. We went in, the last time it was reviewed reviewed and amended was back in 2006. So there were some changes that and clarifications that needed to be occurred. And so we've done that. We're bringing it forward back to them this Thursday. In doing so, there were some proposed changes that we would actually have to do to the ordinance. So a lot of these changes are either clarifications to talk about, like, for example, in the verbiage in section 3, it used the word that the zoning board of adjustment shall have 5 members, but then it assumed that it also said, and shall have 4 alternate members. It doesn't shall have to have 4 alternative members. It would be may have 4 alternative members in just to make sure that there was a quorum. What was wrong with that is that it almost looked like it was a stipulation. You had to have 4 members, and otherwise you wouldn't be able to operate. And so it just it cleans up some of that language that was going on in there. And we had a vice chair, and we've had a vice chair for a number of years, I believe. And the word vice chair wasn't inside the procedures, rules and procedures. So we're just, again, cleaning some of that stuff up. And there were some timeframes that like, for example, for city, for planning and zoning, it's 10 or 11 days from to be notified. And actually for city council, it's 16 days. And so zoning board of adjustment needed to say that also. So again, cleaning up some of that information. We, in section 4, we added that a pre-conference needed to happen for all requests. And then made sure to clarify that city council and board of adjustments have the same public hearing procedures because they're both decision makers. And then we combined a lot of the processes that were called out because what we ended up seeing is that there was a lot of duplication in this particular section of the ordinance. So we just cleaned up that duplication, removed, and just, made it clear. There's a lot of little sections we can go through in this, but those are the overarching things that we're proposing to change.
It makes sense to me,
Yeah.
Okay.
but I'm not speaking for everybody else.
I'm fine with it. It's over my head, so.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So under agenda item number CE, or 6E, discussion amending chapter 118, 427. The why behind this is that we wanted to add a little additional flexibility when it comes to lots that have been in the same configuration or footprint prior to the adoption of zoning in 1998 and the current lot dimensioning requirements. What we were finding is that there was a push, or there was an interpretation that staff was doing, and it made a lot of sense the way that we were doing it, but based off of section 90-65 under the subdivision ordinance, that lots that are in that configuration should be, quote unquote, grandfathered. And why it's problematic is that some of our new codes for these new subdivisions that are created weren't all created equal when these old lots were prepared. They might have been prepared when there was no rules in place. And so what it's caused is a lot of requests to go to the zoning board of adjustment when it wasn't necessarily needed, or my opinion wasn't necessarily needed. That's probably a better way to say it. So what we wanted to do was to see either that we would get a blessing from yourselves and from city council to allow for those things to occur. If not, then we would like to say, okay, we can appreciate that, but we would also like to have a little bit of opportunity for very minor adjustments to those dimensioning. I don't want to call them a variance, but when they weren't meeting our current development standards, that we would allow for staff to make like a 5%, if it was within 5% of that length of that lot dimension, that we would allow that to move forward without having to go towards the board. So we were calling that out as some possibilities to have a discussion to see which way this commission wanted to do and what city council wanted to do, just so we had it clarified. There was just a couple of items that had come up before that Mr. Bartlett made me aware of, and so I think it's worth to have that discussion.
Does this apply to the R categories and PDs, or just one or the other? And does it apply to only lots that were are grandfathered in, or all development?
It would be just the lots that were grandfathered in. Because the rest of the lots would follow, they would follow all the other rules and regulations. And this would just go for dimensioning, so it'd be lot width and lot length, and so they would still need to meet all the other developmental standards when developing the properties.
This just helps streamline the property owner's request at the end of the day, so.
If it's slightly out of.
Slightly out, so I think it's
Tolerance
just
of
common.
plus or minus
Just common sense here,
a
I
couple of
think.
percent.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to F, Chapter 118, Division 5, Administration for Nonconforming Structures. The why for this proposed amendment is to keep options open to our single-family residential folks. As we know, Nacogdoches is, the oldest city in Texas, and at the time that it was created, I'm sure there's a lot of after zoning was created, there's a lot of non-conforming lots. So what I'd done in the past at previous places that I've been is that we were always looking to, because single family residential is kind of number one, right? We're always trying to protect our folks. And so if someone's put into a situation where, because we adopted zoning just to, help better plan our city, but now a homeowner that now has a zoning district that is commercial, but he or she lives in a single family residential home on this commercial zoning district, they're considered to be a non-conforming use and would not be able to expand or do anything along those lines. Why we believe that, we understand why that's in place from a zoning perspective. We want to move the city more towards in line with our zoning ordinance. But from a fairness side of things and just from a reasonability side of things is that this homeowner, what if they wanted to come in and put a carport or a deck on their back or a porch or a pool, things that would not increase air conditioned space. What we've done in the past, or what I've done in the past in a number of cities, is that we put in these small, common sense responses here to allow for homeowners to do these very minor improvements, just so they can, have a reasonable way of life at the area that they're currently living at.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to get some water.
Take your time.
So, that's what would happen there, is that for places or for things like carports, porches, pools, surface improvements, we would allow for that improvement to occur. But the overall, where we'd be pulling a hard line would be is that you wouldn't be able to increase the footprint of the living area of the home.
So just talking about this with us, we've had a couple of carports come through. We've had to look at the design first before it goes through. I mean,
Because it's a non-conforming.
right, because it's a non-conforming structure. So like a historic home that was on Mound Street is one example, and the other one that was off of Regay somewhere.
Yeah.
So, if we have to think about these things, because if people just slap something together, is that our jurisdiction to really say, hey, we approve these plans? Or you can just go ahead and do it based upon the ordinance changes?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let me clarify, is that they would still have to apply for it and go through all the permitting that would need to be done.
Okay.
It's just that we would allow the occurrence of not allowing these improvements to happen at all.
Oh, got it. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So they would still need special permission. It's just that it's allowable if they get that permission.
So let's look at it this way, is that it wouldn't be special permission. We would allow those things. I mean, if they followed all the other rules and regulations, right? They're all within the setbacks. They don't encroach into anything else along the front property line or the back property line. They're building within all of those build lines on the property. then they could be approved. They're not increasing that non-conforming structure anymore. But what they would end up doing is that because it's a non-conforming use, is that technically by strict application is that nothing should be allowed to be built on that property. It just needs to stick as is, or if repairs happen, but they wouldn't allow any sort of increased footprint or things of that nature. But, you know, when you really look at it, look at a person that's living there and they want to protect their car, or, you know, from the weather, that putting up a carport shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, that's something that people do on a regular basis.
So
But
this-
that carport would need to meet all of our current rules and regulations.
So this really doesn't have anything to do with single-family homes. This has to do with other zoned areas that had someone living there, essentially as family living there. Is that correct? Because I mean, if it's, you have a.
Right, so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Isn't this what happened with that Airbnb on Hospital Street near Mound, where they wanted to put a fence in their backyard and they couldn't because it was zoned business?
Which
I don't
one?
know what you're talking about.
It's,
Brad's?
no,
Next to
not
Hattie Leg?
Brad's. It's a couple houses down from the brewery towards North Street on that side. And they wanted to fence their backyard and they couldn't because it was in the historic district and they wouldn't allow a fence. So it exposed the backyard and it was,
That's, yeah, that's a HLPC. It's historic overlay,
oh, and they couldn't,
right.
but this doesn't affect the historic overlay, just
No, I don't think, no,
non-conforming
this is
uses.
non-conforming, yeah.
Thank you.
Seems reasonable. I don't have any questions myself.
Right,
Okay,
6G.
the next one
Wait,
is.
I'm so
this
sorry,
is-
Nathan. Right before you go on there, you had a note that says need to check with this occupational code of the TGLC. Is that,
Oh, that's a local government code.
okay, is that, do you know, it's differently notated, and so I just want to make sure we address that, if there's anything to comment on that. But,
No, that was just for me to just double check.
Okay.
I made a note, sorry, this afternoon. I just wanted to make sure that I wrote it correctly.
okay, thank you.
The next one is probably the one that has the most changes that you'll see, but basically, staff had stated that our plan development section within our code was very thorough, but also very onerous. It basically put somebody that wanted to do something different, you know, in our in our city, had to follow through a lot of hoops. And a plan development is something that you don't take lightly, but at the same time, you know, looking at this, I think there was up to three times, if I read it correctly, is that there's 3 times it needed to come before planning and zoning and city council. And so what we did was went through and looked to simplify the plan development process. The goal was to also, if there was a plan development that it didn't end up, you know, it gets approval, but then it doesn't go through and actually is built, then there's going to be we're adding a reversion clause that the PD would have to go back to city council, but it would go back to the original zoning that the land was under in the first place. We would define the specs of the brand new ordinance just to make sure that the direction that the ordinance says, it tells the person that's applying for it how to do it right, and just so there's no ambiguity there. And then also we were proposing to include a minimum amount of acreage for this type of development. So for example, when you read through it, you'll see that I put in, and now this was a placeholder, I just added in something that I thought was appropriate, especially if we want to allow for smaller home developers, or not necessarily home developers, but PD developers to utilize, you know, a certain amount of acreage. I put 3 acres as a minimum acreage amount. I noticed, and Juan and I had talked, that there were PDs that were previously approved for just one particular lot. And, you know, specifically when you read through what a PD is supposed to be doing and why it's there for you to use, I wouldn't say that, you know, I don't know the whole story or history behind that one, that I looked at,
Absolutely
but
agree
that's
with
not
you
really
on
the
that
idea
one.
behind
I
the plan
think,
development. So that's why we were adding in, minimum acreage and maps.
Makes sense, Nathan.
And so, yeah, that goes through, and really what the process itself was, it had a concept plan, and then you had to go through a development plan, and then you had to get the ordinance approved. So what we ended up doing was removed one whole layer of that. The concept plan now is just, the concept plan and the development plan actually had just been merged all together. And so you only have to do one, actual full-blown going through the P&Z and city council. And so what would happen is you would be, you get your thing, you would get your PD approved, utilizing, you wouldn't have to get full-blown plans done, but you'd have to have plans that were, you know, landscaping plans, you know, maybe bubble diagrams, just to where locations, or maybe not the final location of where it's going to be, but just so you as a commission and the city council would know overall what, you know, what the land uses are, what's going on there, you know, what type of signage is going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. And then after it goes through that process, it would just need to go back to city council after the full-blown plans were done, for kind of like, just like an approval, because we would already have done with public hearings. So this would just make sure that it met that criteria. And then it removes months of time off of the process itself.
Just out of curiosity, when it goes back to the city council, does it have to come back before planning and zoning too, or does
It
it
used to, well, before all of these changes.
Yeah,
it'd
so
come back to
you're
P&Z.
correct. And so that's how it was done. I would say that part of what staff does for you is they ensure that what you say goes. So as long as they're following those parameters, and it meets those minimum requirements as put forth by you as a recommending body and at city council, then what I was proposing, and we can always change it, right? If you feel compelled to bring it back to you as a commission then too, then I would say by all means. But I guess in my mind is that it just seems like another layer to add that through, and you had already kind of blessed it when it goes through the first time as the overall layout and, you know, the specifics that go along with that proposal.
Some of us have been on here long enough to know that, I mean, we see a lot of case studies that have come before us where this applies. I mean, I think of one with Mr. Wright and off Maroney, where the reversion side of this, which I think is welcome, because he had a PD that expired and it didn't revert back to R1, which is pretty restrictive in and of itself, and ran into some issues there. So I think that'd be nice.
I have a question about the district itself would need to be resubmitted and approved with any changes, small minor variances that do not impact more than 5% of the requirement. But some of the requirements, I mean, I don't know exactly what you mean by the requirements. It's not the purposes, right? What?
No, like say, for example, you had given a layout of parking, or you reduced the number of parking spaces by 10, you know, something that falls within that 5%. The reason why is that you currently, when you do get a PD or a special use permit, PD has to go back through, and if there was any changes made, because you're adopting what it actually states, you know, the overall development itself. But small little developmental standards, I think it just gives flexibility to the developer, because, you know, we all know things change when it comes to the developmental process, right? So you get to a certain point and you're like, oh, you know, I didn't know that was there, or goodness, we have to change this now. So it just gives that little bit of flexibility. But if it goes past that, you know, that threshold, then it has to come back to both parties to be approved again. Like there was a major change. Other than that, I would say it's just some of the small things that sometimes get, you know, there's a hurdle put up there because you had to change, you know, the location of a sign or something like that. Like, we all know that if the overall intent is there, I think that's what we can encourage staff to do, to ensure that they know that, you know, if it's just something small like this, we can do it. But if it's something larger, then yes, it needs to go back to be re-reviewed.
So do you feel like this reflects the needs of developers, or is there going to be an opportunity for developers to look at this? Because I think it would make more sense for them to review than.
Yeah, if I would say I would encourage that a great deal. I mean, for us to, we used to have a couple folks that, you know, people that we interact with a lot. They just kind of give it a once over, and then they give us their points of view. So yes, I think that's a great idea.
It looks like you've crossed out a lot of things. I guess the whole concept plan went out the window, so it's just, that's part of it.
Yeah, I think what you'll notice is when you go back and this is where it took a while, but you go back and you compare it, we were just, all those same things that you're looking at, we've already reviewed.
Gotcha.
So it was just going through a whole other layer of the same review.
Nathan, what's the difference between 391 and 394, 5% versus 10%?
Oh, so I was giving you guys options to say is that, you know, 5% is placeholder that I put in. You could go up to 10%, right? So that was going to be something that, same with 3 acres, it could be 5 acres. It could be 10 acres, right? But I would say that Nacogdoches is somewhere where we want to see development, and if we reduce that amount of acreage, then we might encourage other types of development to come in on the smaller types of lots.
Okay, still confused.
118, 394, 118.
Yeah, it is a little confusing. It's a
1.
lot, this is a lot to digest.
Variances for special.
I just don't understand the difference between 391 and 394.
Just 1 second.
They're both variances, but one's 5%, one's 10%. They're just placeholders, but are these recommendations or just simply placeholders?
395.
Looks like variances or special exceptions, or then 394's effect on existing planned developments, giving 10% leeway of deviation. So I would say plans that are not in existence yet has a 5% change. Of course, Nathan can answer this because I'm just assuming, and you know what they say about assuming.
And you said this is on 394?
No, 391
Versus 394.
versus 394. One says 5% deviation and one says 10% deviation. So just,
Right.
Oh, then that might have been just an oversight.
which one is it recommended?
So I would recommend, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to do what people usually make a change in their plan development from the initial submission to, you know, approval. Like, I'm thinking like trees, parking. So let's just say I'll go back with 5%. 5% would probably be a good way to go.
Yeah,
I agree.
yep. And spell out the percent.
I'll be happy to change that. And I know that in the past, what Juan has told me is that subjectivity from staff is a concern. And so this will just leave a smaller amount that we subject.
What is the reasoning behind these plans expiring in 2 years? Because 2 years doesn't sound like a lot of time when financing and things like that are needed. Was that up for discussion, the expiration time? Because that seems to.
Yeah, everything's up.
PD and it expired.
Yeah,
That's
I would
a
agree with
fairly
you, Maggie.
standard.
If they don't start construction.
Is that what it is? Yeah, I mean, so what's
As
the,
long as they started construction,
then it's,
they can go longer, it's just if
They
have
can't
that-
start
gotta do
construction
something.
until they get,
Once it's been approved.
Yeah, but the 2-year thing doesn't
That's-
start
that
until
doesn't
it's
start till
approved.
it's been
okay, so
approved.
that starts, and then if they don't do anything within 2
Yeah,
years.
if they're sitting around for 2
Even
years
just
and have
scrape,
done nothing.
scrape a
If they
road,
just sit
dirt
on
road
it.
on there. Okay, okay, I understand now. For some reason, I thought it was,
There needs to be some, reasonable time period.
Yeah.
They have to actually do something.
for some reason, I thought it was from the moment they apply
Oh, no.
until they, yeah.
Well, that's, it's one of the cases that was on Pearl Street in Austin, where he needed to find funding and, rates increased. And to find funding and get it done in time, could he potentially have been able to do that without city council and the city approving chapter 380? I don't know. So 2 years may seem like a very limited time frame, considering if it's a large plan development, that we might want to adjust that.
can they get
Well,
an
what we could
extension?
also do is we could add in extensions.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, and that seems to achieve at least this group's concern.
Yeah,
Because big commercial projects, obviously can take a long time
right.
just to get
Correct.
the dirt broke.
Okay, and then the last one, I don't really need to go over this. I was talking with one of the commissioners,
We don't have that.
and
I think it's this.
we were going to bring back that discussion of the cluster development and what other options might be out there to allow for developers to do something different. Whether it was affordable housing or what we refer to as the missing middle housing. So what are some of the ways you're able to do that? And so what I could briefly talk on, but I'll be happy to bring this back to you guys at another time. But the city manager, I know, pushing forward with getting someone to finish off the comprehensive. And so with that, there's going to be a large opportunity for this commission or the, I guess the comprehensive and I don't know, workshop or the name is escaping me, but they'll have a group that they together be talking about a lot of these different opportunities. But what I would like to come back and show you is there are a lot of different things that are that can provide this middle housing, right? Whether it be we change a zoning district or we have inclusionary zoning, or we have a tax increment reinvestment zone that encourages economic development because there's reimbursables to the for themselves. So there's a lot of different options that we can do, and I just wanted to provide you with some of those because that might be something that we can talk to our economic development department about, and then look to what we need to do, the initial changes that we want to do, whether it's zoning, like an actual a whole new zoning district. Like for example, City of College Station, they just adopted a whole new middle housing zoning district. And so that's something that we could look at and look, but I just wanted to kind of give you a brief update on that since I told one of the commission members I would bring this up.
Well, this has been my effort to try and get the presentation that Elena made before she left in front of City Council. And part of what is so effective about that presentation is the nice little pictures and just the ideas that, hey, we could do so many attractive, more high-density developments where the developers can still make their profit because there's some big, large homes in there, and then you have affordable homes, and it's all built into a development that also protects, you know, some natural resources and maybe provides some recreation. And that was all displayed in nice pictures that make people feel good when they see them. Whereas talking about zoning districts, I have no idea what that means, and I don't think city council would either. I know you're talking about middle housing, but I don't think they would understand what that means. So
Yeah, and I did put together a bunch of slides that show that, it's like what you're speaking about.
yeah,
I'm just trying to be aware of the times. But
understand.
I'd be happy to go through it again
I
right now.
know,
if
but
you'd like
I've been
to, but
asking for this for
I was
so
thinking that we
long.
can push this one a little bit later.
We don't need to see it. We've already seen it. I want the city council to see it. And I'm not asking them to make a decision. I just want to put it in front of them so they can start thinking in ways that we haven't thought before because we weren't exposed to these what is novel to Nacogdoches, zoning approaches. So I just want them, just, hey, this is what we're talking about. These are some options that we might think about considering in the future. That level of discussion, not anything scary or. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
I mean, I absolutely am for discussing this because I think that's future development and future growth. Nathan, the other day I was in Austin and Mueller, and my gosh, and in Austin, it's transformed into it's a little entire center hub of a city within a city. And it's a really, really good effective use of space and the ability to have outdoor walking areas. I'm not saying Nacogdoches is going to become like that in the next decade, but I will say that it's just something that on a small scale we can definitely look at and say, hey, how do we make this attractive instead of just slapping up, single family homes in a residential neighborhood that just looks alike. So I would absolutely like to see more options on this, talk about it, give some examples of what you're wanting to discuss, because the current state of affairs with our master plan is none. And with the master plan, if they're going to come in and actually suggest land use options or zoning districts, if we don't have a plan and there's nothing for presentation to see, how can anybody understand it?
So I would
Agreed.
like to see the presentation that Elena gave combined with your ideas and your knowledge and what you bring to the table, which is considerable, I think, and maybe run it by us very first thing at the next meeting, because it keeps getting shoved to the bottom, and it's been a year and a half that I've been trying to get a 10-minute presentation in front of city council. And I understand that you're new and you've got to put your own spin on it, but I want to see this move to the top of the list because it always ends up at the bottom, or it gets shoved, to the next meeting, and then
Yeah, so
is that
I'm sorry.
possible? I know it's not your fault. Go ahead.
No, so what I was going to say is that with the idea of bringing this forward as a joint meeting, this would be a perfect opportunity to have that presentation.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, that would be great. And you guys are all with me on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I feel like the lone voice out here sometimes.
It's something, I know it's something you're passionate about, and you want the council to see it. I think a workshop with them and can showcase it and show it so they can see it. I'm presuming they've not seen it.
The city paid for Lily and I to go to the
Right.
conference where we're supposed to be learning new ideas.
Yep.
So if we don't share that, then we're remiss.
I agree.
I think that presentation that you're talking about that Elena gave was an overall zoning, understanding zoning, and that was just a small section.
Right.
of our
Yeah.
overall
It was,
presentation.
but it
Yeah,
was.
it was like 2 or 3 slides.
Small cluster
That's all
housing.
I'm talking about is 2 or 3 slides.
I'm not talking about 2 or 3 slides, Maggie. I'm talking about more.
So if we,
Yeah,
if we
well,
need
good.
it to present it to, like you said, present it to city council, I think it needs to be a little more elaborate than just a couple of slides.
Well, that's fine, but, when is it gonna happen?
It's going to happen. He's putting it on the agenda. This is
Okay.
6H.
Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
And thanks for
Yeah,
cleaning
thank
up
you,
the,
guys.
the codes.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
seems
thank
all
you.
positive, so.
Thanks for attending, Mr. Baker. Hope to see you at every one of our meetings.
Yes.
Well, we're adjourned, I have a workshop, so. Information or recitation of existing policy may be given. Any deliberation shall be limited to a proposal to place the subject on an agenda for a subsequent meeting. Is there anything else beyond the 6H?
We're good.
Then we shall adjourn.
Thank you.